Hey everyone, I'm Jillian. Welcome back to the Aviator Show. We are here at the iconic red barn at Aviator Paramotor, and today we're going to be talking about kiting 101. This video is a great example of kiting in all conditions. If you would like to skip around this video, we provided timestamps in the description below to skip to certain sections. Over the course of this video, you will be hearing from a bunch of different instructors across the country, talking about things such as meeting the wing, clipping in, different wind conditions, places to kite, and also the different types of kiting. Without further ado, let's get right into it.
Welcome to Aviator. My name is Whitney Horkey. We're going to talk about kiting. And kiting is a whole heck of a lot of fun. Kiting can be the most fun out there in the field. Sometimes it's even more fun than flying. But kiting is a basic skill that you develop before we put you in the air. It gives you the foundation of skill that allows you to feel the glider. We want to train in a feeling of the connection to the glider, right? You're not hauling this thing around, rah, 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 using force. We're feeling that connection to the glider into our carabiners where we're connected. And when we are kiting, we're using a harness that gives us a lot more feedback to what that wing above us is doing. We start with basic kiting skills. Now, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about safety, right? Kiting can be very fun up to a certain amount of wind, and then it starts to get pretty dangerous. So we're going to talk about that. Why it's very important to wear a helmet at all times when we're kiting. Picking out a field. Going out to where you think is going to be a great place to kite and assessing the field for, is this a really good situation? Am I going to get a lot of mechanical turbulence? Is it a really bumpy, lumpy field? Am I going to twist my ankle in a gopher hole? Those sorts of things are very important to make a point to look for when you are going out to these places. When we're kiting, it's a skill that looks easy on camera, right? You watch all the experts and the instructors and the pro pilots out there kiting a wing with seemingly no effort. And it becomes that way after a long time of kiting. But in the beginning, when you start out kiting, boy, it sure can be very frustrating. So don't let that get you down. It's a skill that takes time. Almost nobody out there gets to step into day one kiting and be an expert, right? We all have to take baby steps. And so the learning process is exactly that. It's a process. So don't be discouraged. Check your ego at the door and just come out and have fun on the field. If you get to a point where you get frustrated, things are messing up, you're getting down on yourself, take a break. Walk away from that wing, unclip, put that wing away, take a 15, 20, 30-minute break, maybe come back the next day. You'll be surprised how well you can come back the next day and it's refreshed in your brain. And so it allows you to come back with a renewed attitude, and it really helps you get those skills built up. Now, when we go out to the field, we're going to make sure for safety case we are always wearing our helmet, even in no wind conditions. We always want to make sure to have safety in mind. We're always going to make sure that we clip in correctly, and we're going to go through that whole clipping in process when we meet the wing as well. Well, let's meet a wing. Right here I've got a Ozone Roadrunner. These are our ground handling wings. They're not flight rated, but they're designed just for ground handling and kiting. It's a great little wing, so let's meet it. Obviously, you have the wing itself right here. What is a wing? What isn't a wing? Okay, this is not a parachute, right? This is a glider. It's a flexible airfoil. It flies through the air, and it has these cell openings on the very leading edge of the wing, the front of the wing. All the way across this entire front of the wing are these cell openings, and this gives you a technology called ram air. It is ramming air into these cells, quite literally the name, and it's pressurizing this wing all the way across the entire airfoil. And what that does is it maintains a few pounds of pressure throughout the entire wing, and it stabilizes the wing all the way across it. Along this leading edge, we also have these plastic ridges of support. They are called battens. Just like a plastic straw, you don't want to bend it because they don't like to bend back. And so as we are putting these wings away, as we are carrying them around, as we're just messing with it, we don't ever want to bend or twist these things because they'll deform, and therefore it deforms the airfoil of your wing. So as we gather, we just always want to make sure that they're nice and safe. That's the leading edge of your wing. This is not a very big wing in compared to our flying wings. This is only a 14 square meter wing. But you've got the whole big guy over here, leading edge, all the way down to the trailing edge. You can see several different colors of lines on this glider, and they each correspond to a different line cascade. Right here at the center of the wing, you can tell that this line goes off this way. And these two lines are connected and go off this direction because we have two different risers. All of these lines that you have in your wing correspond and go down to your two risers. This is how we connect. We connect to the glider using your riser connection points right here. They connect into your carabiners on your harness that you're wearing, whether it's a kiting harness or your paramotor. And you can tell right over here, each of these lines connect to a different riser, including your brake line. And they're connected to the wing onto these metal triangles. These are called mallions in French, or quick links in English. Notice it's just a loop. There's no knots in this whole entire line system. It's a closed loop system. So there's never a knot you have to undo to get lines apart. If you find a knot in your lines, you have created it yourself, and you got bigger issues. So this is our riser system. Notice how it very nice and neatly lays out the front of the glider versus the back of the glider. The front of the glider corresponds to the very first riser, and that is the A riser. A riser. The A's are the very front of the glider. You got your brake lines all the way back here. This is the back of the glider. When we are setting up to kite for the very first time, I'm going to show you how to build that cockpit where you stand and then you connect into the glider. What is it made out of? This material sounds crinkly. It's like a chip bag. We call this nice and crispy. This material is called ripstop. You're going to see this material in your tent that you go camping with. But what it does is if it takes an impact and it takes a tear, ripstop does what its name describes. It stops the rip from progressing. So it'll typically rip in a straight line. You won't see a weird tear all the way across the fabric and a diagonal. It's typically vertical or horizontal. And so that ripstop fabric is very lightweight. And that's why they take that sort of fabric and they use it to make these airfoils out of it. Ripstop is a very cool technology, and the type of ripstop that they use in our gliders actually has a polymer coating that is infused into this fabric, and that's why we have porosity. Porosity is what we require to be able to fly these gliders. We want this air opening to be able to take the air inside the glider and hold that pressurization that I was talking about all across the wing. Over time, they become more porous, and so it has less lift. It has less ability to stay fully inflated. It takes deflations more often. So what we want to be doing with this fabric at all times is protect it. We don't want to be dragging this around on the ground. The ground is very abrasive. Even a nice grassy field can have sticks or things pointing out of it that can take little tiny tears in the surface of your wing and damage your wing. So we don't want that to happen. We want to be able to protect this from abrasion. We want to protect it from weather. So outdoors in the sun, there's a lot of UV exposure. UV breaks down this fabric more prematurely than almost anything else. So we always want to protect it from the sun. Of course, while we're out there flying around, we're definitely going to be out in the sun, but maybe you've come down and landed and you're talking with your buddies for another hour or two. Take your wing, pull it up into a rosette, go and set it in the shade, or put your wing away, even better. Now, on the topic of putting your wing away, you never want to put your wing away if it's wet. When you put a wet wing away, you lose that crispy chip bag sound, and it starts to deteriorate that silicone polymer coating. If you are kiting and it's a wet, grassy field that you've put your wing down on, you're not going to lay this out in the bright sunshine to dry it off, because now you're introducing UV exposure as well. Perhaps we will gather up the wing, set it in the shade of a tree or in the shade of a building. Or if you have a nice big open space at home or at work, you could lay it out, maybe put a fan on it. You always want to dry these out, because what happens is not only does the wing surface get wet, but your lines also get wet. The important thing to know there is when your lines get wet, they stretch. After that, they dry and then they shrink back up. And so what will happen is eventually you will get line shrinkage, believe it or not, instead of stretching of your lines. And then your wing starts to act a little funny when you're flying around. So always dry out your wing nicely in the shade, in a place where it's not going to get damaged from the wind or the ground. And make sure that you take care of your wing. Treat it with care. Pack it away nicely every single time. What are those? Safety shoes, no longer safety flip-flops. When we go out to the field to kite, you always want to have a good pair of shoes. Okay, protect your feet. Maybe have high ankle support if you have weak ankles. Can be very easy to roll an ankle on an uneven surface. Like we talked about before, get a good field that doesn't have lumps and bumps and holes for you to break your ankles in. So wear a good pair of shoes, all right? The next thing that you need when you're going out kiting is your kiting harness, something to clip into. Maybe it's not this one. The difference that you're going to see with these is in the hang point. So here's an example of another type of kiting harness you may encounter. These are commonly called fall arrest style harnesses. Notice they're a lot more strappy versus a full harness like that ozone oxygen light harness I showed you. The carabiners are positioned in a higher place on of your body, and so that correlates to your hand positions when you are kiting these wings. If I put this on, look at how much higher these carabiners sit on my body versus on the ozone oxygen light, they're down here, closer to my hips. With this hang point, my hands are going to be more naturally upright. I like to call this the field goal position. Looks like a football field goal. So your hands are going to be up here for most of your brake pressures in this type of kiting harness. But the same conditions, whether you're using the lower connection point or the higher connection point, apply in that we're looking for that regular controlling pressure, that 1 to 2 pounds of pressure. So whether you're kiting up here by your ears in this harness, or with the other harness, you're kiting a little lower with your arms, you're still going to be feeling the same amount of pressure down here versus up here with these hands. All kiting harnesses are going to have a universal amount of clips. So the harness I'm clipping into is the ozone oxygen light. Notice it's got a little bit of a backpack right here. This is actually a paragliding rated free flight harness. You can climb up a mountain and jump off and fly with it if you get into free flight. We like to have an extra bit of safety rating, and that's what this harness gives us. It's got a nice, comfortable leg strap system. Instead of just using webbing to hold your legs up, it actually supports your backside a little bit. It's comfortable on the back, and this whole backpack, you can take your wing and get it folded up, put it in that back, and hike up that mountain to do that free flight. Okay, you're gonna have some shoulder straps. They go right over the top. And this is typically where you can make height adjustments. But when we are clipping into this, the ozone light harness, it is a few different steps. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we put it over our shoulders like this. We're gonna reach down and you're gonna find your 2 carabiners. This is where you're gonna be clipping into the wing. But what I'm doing is I'm lifting these straps up. Sometimes when you're putting these things on, they get stuck in your pocket and then you lose sight of a clip. So lift up your carabiners like so, and it exposes all of the clips that you're gonna need. Before we ever clip in, it's very important to think about the process that you're clipping in and make sure that it's the same clips every time. So at Aviator, we like to teach leg, leg, belly, chest, and then chin, as in our helmet. And we do it the same way every time because we may not be clipping into a paragliding harness, we might be clipping into our paramotor, but we're still using the same type of clips. So if we get into a process of a pre-flight using the same steps every time, you're not going to skip any steps. When we miss steps in our clip-in process, it can be a possible safety risk for yourself or others. You could get dragged in a weird direction. You could fall out of your harness if you're not completely clipped in. So it's important to just follow those steps every single time for your safety. So let's start by clipping in our legs. We start at the bottom and we work our way up. We're going to reach between our legs, and we've got two of these kind of oval looking clips. Notice one is blue and one is red. If I grab this clip over here, there's a blue square, and I'm going to be connecting that leg strap into this blue square, round peg into a square hole sort of situation. Once you clip that in there, you give it a solid tug. That's part of your pre-flight check. Once I've got that guy clipped in, I'm going to go and clip in the red side. Same thing here. I'm going to lift that carabiner, find that square, and I'm going to put that right in there. Give it a good solid tug. This will spin and turn, but as long as it is nice and secure, you're good there. We've got our leg straps clipped in. Now, we've got this Cobra clip here. I call it a submarine clip. This is your belly strap, and this actually connects sideways like this. Now, this is the type of clip system called Cobra, where if you have tension on your clip, you cannot unclip it. It will not release, and that's a safety feature. So when we're unclipping from these guys, you actually have to take tension off those, actually squeeze them in. So when we're releasing the clip, we push it together and then squeeze these two levers off the side to release the clip. Same thing there. It just won't let it go if you're pulling on it. So we clip in that belly strap and give it a good solid tug from both sides. Make sure both of those clips have securely fastened into their clips. So we've done our leg, our belly, and now we have a chest strap. And this guy slides up and down, as you can see. It's adjustable. This is really the clip that goes across your chest to keep your shoulder straps from falling off of your shoulders while you're running, kiting, using your arms and your shoulders and your body. So you may need to cinch that down on your chest to get it nice and comfortable. Okay? I can adjust the straps on the top on my shoulders. Notice it's a little loose. I like to have it nice and snug, so I'm going to just snug those down a little bit on my shoulders, because I'm not a very tall individual, so I just have to adjust it to my height. So now I've got this comfortable on my body. I'm going to go through my checks once more. I'm going to check my leg, belly, chest. What am I missing? My chin. What am I missing? A helmet. Always put this bad boy on before you go out to a field and before you ever clip into a glider. We're going to put our helmet on and always clip that chin strap. Make sure that is solid on our head. So let's go through our checks. We've got leg, belly, chest, and chin. We're clipped in to all of our gear. Now it's time to clip in to our glider.
Hello friends, Micah Stevens here. Thank you, Whitney, for that excellent demonstration on getting the harness on our bodies. Now we're gonna get out to the field here and clip ourselves into the glider itself. So we're gonna pay attention to those 4 environmental factors. We've got wind speed as well as direction. We've got the surface that we're laying that glider out on. Then we're paying attention to the objects in the field, both because we don't want to run into them, and they're also going to be creating any rotor. Any object that's upwind of you is creating turbulence. We call that mechanical turbulence or rotor, and that can generate some dirty air that makes kiting all the more challenging. As Whitney said, it's already a difficult thing to do, so let's give ourselves the most amount of open space upwind from us as possible. And the 4th environmental factor that we're paying attention to is the public around us, right? So we want to make sure that we are not getting anybody nervous about us, right? They see a big wing in the air and they have no idea that this is a flexible, gentle airfoil that could do very little damage to anybody or anything, but they don't know that. So we want to give as much space to the public as we can. Here we have a nice open field, We've got lots of beautiful grass to lay out our glider on and nobody's around. So this is where we train. We have lots of space to do our thing. And now let's talk about the actual layout process. We've got the windsock that's showing pretty stout winds today. We're gonna be doing a forward inflation. Ideally, you don't have to do forward inflations in anything more than 4 or 5 miles an hour. And that's gonna be a really cherry amount of wind to do your forward inflations in. When it gets any stronger than that, like it is here today, that wing is gonna really act like a big drogue chute, and it's gonna wanna pull you backwards, and it's gonna be a lot harder on your body and your joints. So anything above 6 miles an hour, you're really looking to do a reverse where you're bracing against the glider rather than running away from it. But for all intents and purposes, we are gonna do a forward inflation today. I'm gonna show you how to lay out the glider onto our field. So we'll go ahead and get my Roadrunner out of the bag here and talk you guys through a forward inflation, starting with the glider layout. So taking the glider out of the bag is pretty easy. It's a simple process. And if you put the wing away correctly every time, it's gonna be easy to get it out of the bag correctly every time. I like to always put the heads of the snakes, as I like to call them, or the bridles, where we clip into our actual glider. I like to put those together whenever I'm not getting ready to clip into the wing. And then every time we gather our wing, we're gonna do what's called a rosette. So whether I'm putting that back into the bag or taking it out, I'm gonna do a rosette where I'm collecting all of these lines and creating small loops of glider line. I like to hold it in my left hand and gather these small loops with my right until I can pick up the wing and get fabric in my hand. At this point, it's a great idea to keep this glider upwind of you, especially when we got higher winds like this. And so you're acting as a stop for that glider. It can't inflate on you. So if you find yourself in this position, it's because you've got your cell openings are exposed to the wind. So a good idea is to actually try to get your glider upside down and then again back into your body. So we get situated in the location of the field that we want, and then my eyes will immediately go back to the windsock to verify roughly where that wind is blowing and how it is blowing. I'm gonna lay my glider downwind here with the leading edge on the top or away from me. Pull out your wingtips first. And what that does is it gives you some differentiation between your two risers. So I've got the leading edge on the top being away from me. And then I'm just gonna drop my lines. I'm gonna walk backwards and I'm gonna get my risers untwisted where you've got our risers separated with the A's on the top. So that is the first step. You get your glider loosely laid out, then you get your A's on the top, separate your risers. We don't have any twists in the risers. We're gonna step forward and just get those risers on the ground. Doesn't have to be oriented perfectly. We're gonna come back to our risers later. Now we're gonna go to the glider itself and we're gonna detail our wing. Just as we prime our engines, we also can prime our gliders, and we're gonna show you that here right now. So I'm gonna get my wingtips out, and I like to pull directly away from the center cells along the leading edge. In this last outside cell here, if you pull it directly away from that center cell, but about 5 or 10 degrees upwind from where those center cells are laying, that ends up giving you a nice pre-scoop, as I like to call it, in my leading edge. It's already gulping air, and so as soon as I pull tension on those lines, it's just ready to go, ready to rock and roll. So we did one side, let's go to the other side. Walk over to this last cell, about 5 to 10 degrees upwind from the middle two cells there. And we can see how that just nicely preps our glider for a smooth inflation. I can't stress enough how taking your time and diligently working your glider in a layout fashion directly into the wind would resolve 99% of most failed launches. It's just a matter of attention to detail, care, and really slowing the heart rate down. Continue to breathe through the clip-in process. All right, so we've got our glider laid out for a forward. Now we'll go ahead and come in and work one riser at a time. So I'm gonna go ahead and just twist this guy up a little bit so that you can see how I work this process. The first thing you wanna do is make sure your risers are separated. We already did that. Now we're gonna make sure that the A's are on the top of everything else. That's sort of the next thing. If you come in here, we see that we've got blue and green lines over top of our A lines, and we wanna make sure that the A lines are on the top. So a simple trick you can use is just grab one of your A lines, you can drop the riser, and then you're gonna pull that riser, the entire riser, through that mess till you get hold of your bridle again. Work those lines off of it, and like magic, that riser is detangled. Once you get it in this orientation, you still could have other twists. You want to make sure the A's are clear to the wing, and then the B's are clear to the wing, C's and rear riser or your brake lines. One detail I'd like to point out is that I'm holding this riser nice and high as I'm working the lines. And if you've got a line over, when you're untwisting these lines, a great tip is to just come towards the origin and then pull them down and away. We'll do the same thing on the other side. We'll lay this riser down for now, hold it up nice and high. A's are clear, B's are clear, C's are clear. Brake line is clear all the way to the wing. And we have a perfectly detailed glider. We are almost ready to clip in. But before we do that, we're gonna pick up both risers, hold them up nice and high. We do this at the same time to maintain symmetry. We get these risers evenly tensioned. We're gonna take 2 steps. 1, 2 steps in. We're gonna lift, and that lifting motion gives us slack in our lines before we lay out the risers on the ground. I'm gonna bring these risers down to the ground. I'm gonna pull them back out a little ways, and then I'm gonna rotate them A's away with the brakes towards the inside. And at this point, I'm gonna exaggerate what I call the splay. So A's to the outside, brakes to the inside, exaggerate the splay. What that exaggeration does is it gives it structural durability. And the reason why I like to do this is that when my riser is something like this, I can easily come in here, I can bump it, I can twist it, and then when I come in to actually clip in, I might do it incorrectly because I haven't established the orientation of my riser. Exaggerate the splay, A's away. Excellent. So we're doing a forward inflation, which means we're gonna be having our back towards the glider. So I'm gonna step in here, I'm gonna face away from my glider. And at this point, it's a matter of just getting ourselves clipped into the glider. We have a very specific sequence that we teach all of our students that come through Aviator, and that is an underhand grip right at the bridle. I like to tell people to hold it like a pencil. We're gonna pick it up, and we're gonna let that riser drape as we twist it forward to the point where our A's are against our thighs. Another way to describe this is you're gonna check the time on your wrist, check the Rolex. You don't have it anymore because you sold it to get into paramotoring, but check the Rolex, and then we can clip in. The A's should be against your thighs, brakes should be up. Same thing on the other side. Grip, flip. You can change hands if you want to. We just need to maintain this orientation of our bridle as we connect. And clip. As soon as you hear those carabiners click, that's your mental cue to go to check the harness. So we're gonna check 1, 2 leg straps, 3 belly strap, 4 chest strap, and then 5 chin. And as I'm doing those checks, as Whitney described, we are physically trying to make these fail as we check them. Excellent. Now that we've checked our harness, it's now time to check our connection points. We're gonna check our carabiners, closed and locked. We don't have trims on our Roadrunners, but the trimmer would be set right here, and we wanna make sure that that's set to launch. And then we come down both sides, and we like to pick up our risers and make sure that they are square, meaning the brakes are on the top, A's are against our thighs. Everything's looking good there. Then we can move to the brake handles, Personally, I like to grab them from the insides with my knuckles touching, and I like to squeeze them off the magnets there. And as I'm doing that, I'm making sure that these brake lines run free and clear all the way through these pulleys. We don't want a situation where we've tied something around our brake pulley and we go to pull pressure and pressure pulls, but then it doesn't return when we want it to. That can cause an unintended turn after launch. It can be a very bad situation. So we're always checking that those brake lines run free and clear through the pulleys before moving on to the next step of grabbing our A's. We call this the finger gun show. We're gonna go down and grab our A's with these finger guns. So we're gonna come to the holsters, then we're gonna slide down, and then we're gonna find the A's with our thumbs, just like that. So we've come underneath everything, and we've just collected the front A's with our thumbs. And we're gonna come up and out. You'll notice how I'm grabbing the A's. It's really just a cradle with my thumb and my pointer finger there, and it's a very loose grip. And what this does is it gives an automatic sort of release that happens when it's appropriate. The other option that you have is to do the pinch method, where you're just gripping right below the malleon with your thumb and pointer finger. I don't like this method as much because it can get in the way of your kill switch when the time comes to clip in with your paramotor. This method rests behind that kill switch so that it's very easy to stay, so it stays out of the way from that kill switch, and then it's very easy to just slide off when the time comes. So we're gonna keep those thumbs forward for now as we find our center, which is the next step here. So symmetry, symmetry, symmetry. Everything revolves around symmetry. I'm gonna come forward very gently and very gently indeed. What we wanna avoid is something like this, right? Where I'm inadvertently inflating my glider and I'm ruining the layout that I had. So let's get this thing back on the ground. So we wanna very gently come forward, find our center, just using the weight of the lines. As you just saw, any additional tension can invite that glider to fly before I'm really ready for it to. So as you find your center point on the glider, you're also finding that point on the horizon that is congruent to the center in which you feel in your hands. So I've got my center point locked in. I'm gonna look straight down as I take 2 steps back. The reason being is that if you look straight up and you take 2 steps back, it's not necessarily straight. So I'm gonna find my center one more time. Keep your eyes up on that point. Look straight down, and you're more likely to take steps directly backwards. Eyes back on that point or your instructor, and get ready for a running position. When you're in higher winds, I recommend not taking steps back, but we're doing this in very low winds today. So we're gonna take these 2 steps back. And then the most important part of the entire clip-in process comes now, which is taking 2 deep breaths. The idea of flying can be very nerve-wracking. It can get the heart going. It doesn't have to. You can continue to breathe and really find your center spot emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, just as you are physically. And that's why we take these 2 deep breaths, is to slow our heart rate down and to remind ourselves that we're here to have fun. And that's what we're about to do. So 2 deep breaths, big smile. And when you're ready, you're gonna keep your eyes on that center point. Note where my hands are in relation to my body. They are out and away, and I'm pulling tension on my carabiners. And that's gonna allow the harness, the risers, and your skeleton to do the work for you rather than your muscles. Nothing we do in the kiting should involve much muscle whatsoever. You've got a strong and fast lower half to provide you speed required to keep that wing alive, but then a very relaxed and stoic upper half, including your brain. Keep things slowed down in your mind, perceive as much as you can, open your eyes, keep your head up, and just keep breathing. All right, I'm ready to go here. I've got my arms down by my side. As I inflate the glider, I'm gonna bring these A's just gently. It's kind of like suggesting the glider up into the air with those A's. So as the glider inflates behind me, I'm going to suggest them up. And then once the glider gets over my head, I'm going to release the A's by just letting my thumbs lag backwards. So this is a very easy day for kiting. We've got lots of wind here. That glider came up really nicely for me because I've got so much wind speed. It's kind of like a rudder on a boat. The more speed you have, the more responsive that rudder is going to be. Speed is life, speed is control. Whenever you get ready to depower the glider, we want to face it, right? Because I'm not always going to be in a kiting harness. I'm also going to have a motor and a spinning blade of consequences, as I like it described, on my back. And I don't want that consequence to be the glider getting torn up. So I'm going to face the glider in a reverse position, and how I like to get there first is with some brake pressure. So slow the glider down, twist underneath it, and dodge that riser. This riser on my right side now, I'm gonna swing around it as I turn. So get your head around that riser, face the glider, establish control again, and then we'll just go ahead and pull these brakes straight down to our pockets as we continue walking backwards, and then gently stepping forward with it as it comes down to the ground to relieve any tension in these lines so that the glider doesn't fly again on me.
It's an early morning day here at Lake Wales, no wind whatsoever. So without wind, you do not want to try to run this thing and hang kite it into the sky. Instead, you want to take your time and make sure that all these lines are clear, because you want to get in the proper mindset that each line isn't going to be tangled. Because if you're not in the right mindset, you start to have doubts, and doubts really add up throughout your paramotoring career. The reason we don't hang kite this wing up without wind, you're just going to drag it through what presumably is a very moist landscape. Today, it's very dewy out, it's summer. We like to give it a little bit deeper V than this. So just get a nice deep V, increases your odds of success. Kiting in no wind is not really the best idea. It's actually very difficult, but no smooth seas make a skilled sailor, right? Same thing. You should know how to kite in all aspects. So we're gonna go ahead and inflate this wing. This is the new Moxie. The Moxie is a student rated wing that's supposed to be really good on inflations. We're gonna put our trimmers to neutral, go through our checks, leg, waist, chest, chin. Make sure our brakes are clear to the pulley, find our double A's, arms stretched nice and wide, slowly find that pressure until you find your center. Pick a point on the horizon, one step back. All right, there's gonna be no wind helping you, so you're gonna use a lot of legs and run as hard as you can. Okay, here we go. Push, 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 push. A's are coming up. Release, check your wing. You gotta keep moving forward because there's absolutely no wind. Light on the brake pressure. You can see, just letting the risers do the work, not muscling it forward. My hands are out. Just feeling a little bit of brake pressure. It's dipping right, step under it. There we go. Successful forward, reverse, keep moving back, let that wing come down. A lot of running in no wind days. It's about just letting that wing come up, get above you, apply a little bit of brake pressure, but keep moving those feet.
Welcome to safety class. My name is Jillian. This is
Trevor.
And basically we are going to be talking about kiting, and basically that you should be fearing kiting. It can be extremely dangerous, and we want to take all the safety precautions that we can in order to do it in a safe and fun manner.
Yeah.
Is that good?
I don't think you should fear kiting. You should be cautious of the conditions and environment in which you're choosing to kite in. There is risk. You are playing with the one thing that is risky in aviation, and that is the ground. Oh, not enough. Did she sign the waiver?
Don't worry guys, I'm fine. I didn't break my neck.
There are some things that you definitely want to know, some things you want to avoid, and some things you want to do, and Jill and I are going to talk about that today.
I don't know why I'm so nervous. All right, so when we go out to kite, there are a few things that you may want to bring with you as you go out. So a kiting helmet is very, very important. Never clip into a glider without a helmet.
Now, I know some people will be like, well, I only kite in light winds. Still, make sure you wear that helmet. It's better to have your brain bucket on and not need it than not have it and need it.
Think about what you're wearing. If you're in a super rough terrain, you might want to wear long pants in case you get scraped up. You might want to wear long sleeves in case those lines get caught on your arms.
It might be summertime and 100 degrees, so you might not want to do that, but you can occasionally get cuts and bruises on your arms, and it might be worthwhile to have some fabric there between you and the risers themselves.
Shoes, it's good to have like ankle support, especially if you're in a field with a lot of holes. We have a lot of holes here in Lake Wales because of the little critters that are around, so having that ankle support is great so you don't roll your ankles.
Make sure that you wear shoes that not only are comfortable to walk around in, but that are somewhat protective of your foot.
Gloves can help prevent burns from lines if the winds get a little bit stronger. If you're kiting in super low winds, you might not need gloves.
If you find yourself kiting on the brake lines themselves, you know, going with just your hands can lead to you rubbing your fingers raw, cutting your hands, and all the not so fun things. So make sure you bring a pair of gloves even if you don't need to wear them. In addition to that, all the other things that you obviously need if you're gonna go kiting, like a harness. You don't wanna go to the field and forget your harness. You're gonna need your wing because if you're gonna go kiting, you need the wing. Those are some of the most important things that you need to make sure that you bring with you anytime you go kiting. There are other things like some wrist guards, elbow pads, knee pads, silly little things that might come in handy, but those are the most important things. Well, we talked about what you need to bring. Let's go to the next spot, which is the location. Okay, location scouting is a thing you definitely want to do as you're starting to get into the sport. You want to find the good spots to be, the bad spots to be, and start to learn what to look for. Today, we're at the local park here in Lake Wales, Florida, and we wanted to talk about some of the things that we're encountering / looking at when we're considering this as a possible place to kite.
If you look around, there's lots of trees at this park, which are obviously potential hazards to be drug into and can also create rotor. Again, you want to be thinking about that huge lake over to our right that you could also be potentially drug into if that wind picks up.
You know, as we start to look at the park, first off, how much space is there? There's an okay amount of space, but there isn't like an excess, right? You're gonna be getting a run in and then you're gonna have to stop, reset, and walk somewhere else. Meaning, if like the wind picks up, there's not very much room for you to actually disable that glider before you run into an object like trees or houses or a lake, which would be not a very safe condition. So this park is definitely not a place you want to be kiting if there is any amount of wind, because you don't want to run that risk of getting drugged. There's also hills right here. There's rocks, there's road, there's trees, there's all those things. There's a lot of obstacles. So this particular location would be a not super great spot. You can do some forward inflation practice. You don't want to be out here when there's wind and you're running a possible risk of being drugged. On to the next location. We are at another park nearby the one that we just talked about, and there's a few new things at this park that we wanted to discuss.
So you might think a baseball field is a great open area for you to go kite in, but as you can see behind us, there's a few obstacles in our way that are, again, potential hazards to be drug into. So we've got baseball fences, we've got a park, we've got potentially people playing baseball games. So a bunch of things to look into as you're picking your spot to kite in again.
Yeah, it's not only like the things that you might run into, it's what might you put your wing into. Because if you dump your wing into a fence like that, you could get a hole in it from the top of the fence, you could rip it, you could do any of those things. Or you could spend hours trying to dig it out of the fence. Don't ask me how I know. And so you just want to not only be aware of what you physically might run into if you're not paying attention, or even if you are paying attention, but also like what does your wing have the potential of hitting? Telephone pole, top of a house, truck, you know, a skate park, whatever. You just want to be aware of your surroundings. And on to the next location.
Hey, can I get a Big Mac? That'll be all. Thank you.
Are you selling all this? Is it for sale?
No.
That is not for sale.
No.
Contrary to popular belief, this is not a good location for kiting.
Hey, Trevor, you want this Big Mac?
On to the next location.
As paramotor pilots, we are inherently lazy, and it would be really nice to just step outside your door and kite in your backyard. Now, if you are privileged and you do have a nice big open field, you can do that. However, in this backyard, we've got trees on all sides and we've got a lake down there, and there's also a house. So we're gonna get turbulence off of all these things, create rotor. For that wing, it's not gonna be a great kiting location. You can get dragged into many things. And also we're on a very steep downward slope, which should not be fun to run up if the wind is coming down it. So keeping those things in mind is very smart to do. How's that Big Mac?
It's very good, actually. Thank you for the Big Mac.
You're welcome. Hello. Hello. There's also small children running around. Mom. That would also create hazard to kiting.
Oh,
Hi, Puppy. Hi, Electra. All right, let's get into our kiting gear.
Now that we have our kiting gear on, we are gonna go out and do some reverse kiting because we have some beautiful wind today and we wanna take advantage of that while we can.
So before we go kite, we're gonna talk a little bit about the dangers that are at this airport. So one thing that we have here is a jump school. So we have skydivers that will be falling from the sky onto the field that we are kiting on. So we want to be conscious of when that jump plane goes up in the sky and when there potentially may be skydivers coming down. And we want to always bring our glider down to the ground before those guys get anywhere near us, just so we prevent any danger. We also have students right now. There's a class going on. So we just want to be aware of the students, stay out of their way so that we're not disrupting their learning and not, again, preventing any danger with them because they might not know the correct techniques to getting that wing down quite yet. So I'm going to teach you how to clip in. Here I've got my Roadrunner kiting wing. Now in this higher wind, we don't need a perfect setup that we would for low wind kiting where we want to create that perfect crescent shape in the wing. But here I can kind of just gently plop my wing down. If you keep it in a bundle, that'll prevent the wing from actually inflating as you're setting up your lines. Pull your risers out nice and straight. Just kind of check that your A's are on top. So I'm gonna let both risers hang. Grab my A lines, check that they're both on top. Perfect. Go down to my B's and C's. Good, those are clear. And then down to my D risers, check those lines, and then of course check my brakes. So that all looks clear. Now, when you're setting your risers down, what you always do is A's away, brakes on the inside. That's how you place them on the ground, just like so. And when you're clipping in for reverse, you want to be facing towards the wing. You're just going to pick up both risers at the same time, bring them together, making sure that those A risers are on top, and again, clear all the way to the front of the wing. Once I have that all set, I'm just going to do a 180-degree turn to my left. So I'm going to hold my risers, flip them 180 to the left, and then just slide them straight into my carabiners like that. So I'm going to unclip my carabiner, slide it in just like that. Same thing on the other side. All right, now that I'm clipped in, I'm going to go through my checks. Leg, leg, waist, chest, chin. Good. Check my carabiners are closed and locked. Perfect. Run down to my brakes, make sure they are on top. Hold them up, make sure my roads are clear. Perfect. Pull the brakes off the magnets. Make sure it's clear to pulley. And then there's a couple different techniques for how to grab your A's in reverse. My preferred method is to just step back until you have tension and the cross is over the risers. So before my cross was over the lines, that's when I grabbed my brakes. And now I want this cross to be over the risers. Once that is like so, I can see that my A is on top there. And then my A is right there on top there. Perfect. So I'm going to hold both A's one on top of the other in one hand, making sure again that they're both on top of all the other lines. I'm going to get both hands together so I'm nice and symmetrical as I'm bringing that wing up. As I'm pulling tension on these A's, you'll see that that wing is already starting to inflate a little bit. As I start to step backwards, I'm not going to need to step back very fast because that wing already wants to shoot up. So keeping my arms nice and straight, I'm just going to start slowly pulling back on those A's. Not too hard, and then release my A's once I'm through that power band. Come in with a little bit of brake pressure to catch the surge. And then for reverse kiting, what we do is we step low, pull low. So if I have a low side on my left, I'm gonna step low and pull on my left hand, because when I pull on my left hand, I'm actually pulling the right side of the glider down because I'm in reverse. If my right side is low, I'm gonna step low like a pendulum, get under it, pull a little bit on my right side. Everything that you do in reverse, your hands are kind of in like this triangle formation with your body. Think of your body as the bottom of the triangle. You don't want to have your hands out like this because you're pulling way too much brake. You kind of just want to keep them in towards your body. You're going to have the most control that way. Biggest thing you want to do with kiting is use your body. So the more I can step under that glider and use my weight shift, the better it is because I'm creating less drag on the wing. always be moving back into the wind as well. It's kind of like a sideways back step, rather than if this is my low side and I just run that way, I'm just gonna keep creating a low side because I'm not moving into that wind. All right, now we're gonna switch to forward. The biggest thing with reverse kiting into an actual launch when you're going to go fly is that you have this wing under perfect control before you go to turn. If your wing is like going to a low side and then you try to turn, that wing's gonna automatically fall as you're turning. So we're gonna get this wing perfectly under control. I should be able to just stand here for a second with it not going anywhere crazy. And then I'm gonna just turn, keep holding a little bit of pressure and keep moving into the wind. I don't have to move too much right now because we have enough wind for me to be able to just stand here. My feet are bopping up and down. They're trying as hard as they can to keep moving forward into that wind. It is getting a little bit gusty, so you'll see this wing kind of bopping up and down a little bit. I'm kind of getting pulled a little bit backwards. If it starts to get dangerous, I'm gonna turn back towards the wing because I'll have more control that way and I can see where the wing is and what it's doing. But for now, I'm just holding my sweet spot of pressure and trying to hold my ground moving into that wind. I'm just making sure I have a good grip on the ground so that I can continue to move forward. So just check your wingtips out of the corners of your eyes. Some people just choose one wingtip to stare at the whole time and it tells them whether that side is high or low or perfectly centered. We never want to look up because when you look up, you automatically start to slow down or even just move backwards like I did when I looked up. You lose vision of the horizon and it just kind of messes everything up. Okay, all right, so I want to bring this wing down, so I'm coming back to my reverse position. When I go to reverse, I'm gonna pop my hands up really quick, turn fast, and immediately come back in with that pressure. And then to bring it down, I'm gonna hold some brake, start pulling a little bit in more, stepping backwards, and as soon as it comes down, I'm gonna release that brake and start running towards the wing to set it down gently. I don't wanna bring that wing down super harshly. So again, I'm letting up a little bit on the brakes and running towards the wing. Rosetting up your wing in high wind. So I'm gonna unclip my risers. We always marry the heads together to prevent tangles in the risers. And then when you're rosetting in high wind, what you would want to do is not have those cells into the wind as you're rosetting it because you're going to start to inflate the wing and it's going to make the process harder for you. So what I'm going to do is just hold the lines and walk to the back side of the wing so that I can stand behind it and then start rosetting. And then you'll see those cells. It's much easier to rosette this way because I'm not inflating that wing as I'm picking it up. And I'm gonna hold the fabric in front of my body again to prevent it from inflating as I walk it back to where I'm going to pack it up.
First thing that we want to do is take a peek at that windsock, see which way the wind is blowing, see which way we need to lay the wing out going into the wind, because that's kind of the most important part. Once we do that, we find a nice good spot in our field with plenty of space, both downwind and upwind, where we can run and possibly get drug, which this is a good spot for that. Then I'm going to set the wing down in the biggest ball of mess I possibly can and make a huge tangled mess. I'm just kidding. The goal is to avoid that if possible. First step is going to be separating and identifying the two risers, the right side and the left side. Sometimes you can do it right off the bat, like I'm lucky enough here. Sometimes you need to open the wing up just a little bit. If you have wind, sometimes you can do that one-handed technique. If you're not able to do the one-handed technique, it's a good idea to just open up the wing like this. If there's higher wind conditions, it's best to leave the wing as tightly packed as possible. You don't want your wing blowing down the field if there's higher winds and you try opening it up perfectly and it just goes tumbling away from you. So in these wind conditions, I keep it a little bit smaller and I can get away with not perfectly opening it up into a beautiful croissant because we have a little bit of wind. Go for this right riser. First goal is making sure the A's are free and clear. The A's are usually the red lines and sometimes the red top up here. In this case, it's the blue one. Kind of shake on those a little bit. You can see there's nothing on top of them. They are all three free and clear and not twisted. Once I do that, I normally go to the brake line, tug and shake on that brake line to make sure that too is not twisted. Then I just do a quick check of all of the other lines. None of those look twisted or tangled. I'll move over to the other side, which we have a small little twist here. So that's going to leave me questioning what possibly happened and what do I need to do to fix that problem. We will readdress that in a second. Start moving my way backwards and I see that there's a twist here. Undo that. Now that's untwisted. A's on top are free and clear. Nothing is on them. Nothing is twisted. Nothing is tangled. Brakes are free and clear. Then come together with the right riser in my right hand, left riser in my left hand. Connect at the tips. I flip to the right, 180, and clip in. Now you're ready to grab your controls. First thing I do is go for the brakes. One way that I do it is I start at the carabiner and I work my way all the way down. If you hook in correctly, your brake line your brake should be sitting here with nothing twisted, nothing tangled, in a straight line. So I'll just kind of walk my hand down this riser all the way to the brake and pop it off. Okay, then I go right here to this carabiner. Make sure that the carabiner is opening inward. Follow the riser all the way down and you can see my brake is sitting right here clearly. If you make sure these carabiners are in and follow the risers all the way down like this, you will never grab your brakes with a tangle, just like that. Okay, for your A's, what you want to do is you want to put the cross in the risers before the lines, right? Here's all your lines. You don't want that cross up here on the lines. You want it back here behind the lines. Then you want to grab this A right here, which is free and clear, and this A right here together. Notice the cross in the risers is back here. Both A's are free and clear. The A on the right side, or the A on the right side of my hand goes to the right side of the wing. Left side of my hand goes to the left side of my wing. And I am now ready to inflate the wing. First and foremost, do another quick check of that wind. If you can't feel the breeze on your back, make sure that wing is ready to fly and smoothly inflate the wing. As soon as the wing comes up, release those A's, keep the wing from overflying you. If it starts to go to your right, pull a little bit of right brake, move a little to the right. If it starts to go left, pull a little left brake and move to your left. The most important part with kiting is that you're very smooth, you're very slow, you're very calm. One of the biggest things with new pilots is that they tend to be very frantic. They tend to be full of energy, of nerves, of pressure. They're nervous, anxious, stressed, whatever it is. They start moving very quickly. The paraglider tends to respond to whatever it is that you give it, AKA if you're very calm and smooth and relaxed, so too is the glider. And so you can see the more slow, calm, and relaxed we are, the more slow, calm, and relaxed the wing is. So now we're just doing light little pressures. As that wing starts to dip to the right side of me, I'm watching the very back center of the wing there. As it starts to go to my right or left, I kind of move my body to the left, start to walk a little to the left, pull left brake, and put my right hand up. As it starts to move to my right, I kind of move a little to the right, turn a little to the right, and pull right brake. And it's kind of this teeter-totter. The most important thing to remember is as you pull one of the brakes, that your other brake has to go up. AKA if it's going to my right, I need to pull right brake and ease my left hand up. If it starts to go to the left, I need to put my right hand up and apply left brake. Now, one thing that is also important is how you do the walking, because you don't just want to walk directly under it. It's important that you walk under it and into the wind. I like to say at a 45-degree angle, because if you just walk directly under it, you can kill the lift in the wing, which is going to cause it to stall down and fall in front of you, which is not the goal. So you need to move slightly into the wind and to the side that the wing is falling. Another thing that is important to note about the walk is that when you are walking, that you're walking as if you have a glass of water on your head and you don't want to spill it. You don't want to be walking very bouncy because you watch as the wing kind of gets disrupted, adds lift and removes lift. It's just it's not very smooth. The whole goal of paragliding is to be very, very smooth, very calm, and very in control. Now the posture is equally as important as everything else mentioned. My butt is back just a little bit, my knees are slightly bent, and my chest is forward. This allows me to get a really good weight shift position. It also allows me to be ready to sit into and load the glider if the wind picks up for whatever reason and I start getting drug. If I'm standing locked legs straight up, the wing starts to pull me, I'm gonna get pulled over forward. If I'm leaning really far back, I have no weight on my butt. I have all of it on my back. I can quickly fall onto my back or get yanked, pulled, pushed, and fall over. You want to be in a very good, almost battle-ready stance to kind of just dance with that wing, add loading and remove it as ready. Now, one thing I always remind students is this isn't a battle. You're not battling against the wing, you are dancing with the wing. If you feel like it's you versus the wing, you're doing it wrong. You want to be one with the wing, you want to flow with the wing, you want to dance with the wing. You don't want to fight the wing. To go from reverse to forward, you're going to want to make sure that you have the brake toggles. If for some reason you're kiting on these brake lines, you're going to want to go back to those toggles before you start to turn around. The turnaround itself is important. Most important thing is that in the turnaround process, you begin to move forward or upwind, not downwind. A lot of times people like to turn and walk backwards, and this can cause to the wing falling out of control and you making a mistake and it come crashing down. It's important that that turnaround process is smooth. We typically like to plant our right foot because we turn around our right shoulder. We like to keep our hands nice and smooth at the same spots because your hands don't know if the wing is forward or back. The wing doesn't know if you're forward or back. It only knows if you do this in the process of turning. All right, so we plant that foot, we spin around like this, and we move forward, loading that front chest strap. Don't have to necessarily take steps, but what you want to do is make sure that the momentum is forward and not backwards. I'll give an example of backwards. Right, you go to turn and you step backwards. See, I'm now out of control, the wing is losing lift, and you're killing its wind. In that turnaround process, you want to make sure you keep these hands nice and at the same spot, aka you're not going to pull more brake in the turnaround process, or you're not going and throwing your hands up in the turnaround process. It's about being smooth, it's about being calm, it's about being in control. You want to make sure you have that wing perfectly above you or just slightly to the side that you're turning. Then give a nice smooth turnaround, small step forward, regain control. Once I turn around, I like to peek at a wingtip, not straight up because it reduces your ability to run as well as load that wing. Keep that chest down, those legs behind you, and ready to move. Woo! There we go. I like to keep myself nice and loaded on that chest strap. Reverse, you load the wing by sitting in the seat. Forward, you load the wing by laying into the chest strap. I like to look at a wingtip because a wingtip gives me visual reference as to what the wing is doing. When doing so, it's just a small turn of your head. You don't want to be looking up like this because again, you just changed my stance. I no longer can load it. I'm a little off-centered. Arms like to go back, kind of like a bird, kind of flapping in the wind, and I look to a wingtip. You can stand a little more straight up like this, but if you do this in higher wind conditions, you're just going to get drugged and you're not going to be able to keep the wing loaded. One of the most important things to know about forward kiting is that you need to be ready to whip around back to reverse quickly. If that wing starts to come down like this to the right, I need to be ready to rip around to the right and regain control. You don't want to try and save something while forward kiting. If your wing comes down and you're touching a wingtip and you're like, oh, I think I can get it, stop. Turn, regain control, get the wing under control, turn back. You don't want to try and save it forward kiting. You don't have as much control of yourself. You don't have as much ability to load the wing. You don't have as much ability to recover from mistakes. You want to turn reverse if that wing ever starts to fall out of control, if it ever takes a collapse or starts to stall or goes too far to a side, like this right here. We want to turn, we want to regain control, and we want to turn back. Now, the other thing with forward kiting that's important is you want to turn around whichever way the wing is falling. Meaning, if that wing is falling to the left like this, you're going to want to turn around to the left. If that wing is falling to the right like this, you want to turn around to the right. That's important because at some point you're going to have a prop on your back, you're going to have a motor on your back, you're going to have a cage around you. If you try and turn against those lines, right? Against those lines, it's going to lead to you turtling backwards. All right, one of the other important things with forward kiting as well is that if you do start to lose control, right? It's falling to this left side, I'm losing control, it's getting out of control. It needs to be a very quick turnaround. From forward to reverse needs to be almost violent. It needs to be a snap if needed, right? If you're under control, you don't need to do that. But if you're losing control of the wing for whatever reason forward, you need to quickly turn yourself around. Now, from forward or reverse to forward, it needs to be very smooth, right? So this process, when I'm in control, can be smooth. This process is always smooth. If I'm losing control forward, it needs to be a very quick turnaround. You don't want to waste that time. You don't want to take too long. You got to get yourself around, regain control. Wait until you are firmly in control. Control is gained. Wing is in my control almost, right? It's perfectly above us. Now I can turn back. So see, that needs to be a smooth process. There needs to be patience. You don't want to rush that. You don't want to be trying to force anything. You don't want to be trying to do something prematurely. That's when mistakes get made. So we wait until we can get that wing all the way up, under our control again. Wait, never rush it. We lose our wind and we set it down. See, if I had just gone to turn too soon there, I would have stalled the wing behind me, which can be dangerous if you have a wing, a motor, prop spinning, all of those things, you can turtle or break lines. So you want to take your time, you want to have that patience, you want to make sure that every move you do is thought through, in control, and smooth. To kill the glider in these nice light-ish wind conditions is pretty easy. What we're going to do is we're going to apply gentle both brakes and hold it as we watch the wing kind of sink down. Now, one important thing to note about this is that if you do this in enough wind where you're getting drug, it can drag you. If you are getting a little bit too much lift, it's important that you kind of sink into that seat so that it doesn't pull you. You're going to want to hold those brakes all the way until it hits the ground like that, and even after that if the wing tries to fly. We'll do it again. Disable the wing, you're going to pull both brakes down as far as you can and hold. Let the wing go into the ground. Once the wing is fully disabled, you can bring those hands back up. Again, if there's higher wind conditions and you're trying to disable the wing and you're starting to get drug, it's important that you really sink down into that seat to make sure that you don't get pulled down the beach. There's two different types of kiting. There's going to be low wind kiting and there's going to be high wind kiting. For this example, we're going to talk about anything above 8 miles an hour as high wind and below 8 miles an hour of low wind. Now, my general rule of thumb is that if I'm inland near objects, houses, or whatever, I try not to kite in high wind. I save high wind for places where there's smoother air, whether that's a big lake that's producing a breeze, or whether that's the ocean, or whether you're somewhere where the air just can't get disrupted that much. Then I'll be willing to kite upwards of 15 miles an hour of wind, but I try and avoid those higher wind conditions. So now let's bring it back to the lower wind, all the way up to 8 miles an hour. Well, on the low end of that low wind spectrum, right, 0 to 4, you're going to be doing forward inflations. There's not quite enough wind to actually keep that wing up. So you're going to need to constantly be moving. In those situations, you want to make sure that you have plenty of space for you to do those inflations, for you to get that practice in and not worry about running off of an edge of a cliff or something like that. For the higher wind conditions, you have just enough wind to keep that wing up, which means you want to make sure that you're aware of what is upwind of you, disrupting that airflow, and what is downwind of you. Because one of the biggest things is you never want to be upwind of something you're not willing to get drug through. Because if that wind does pick up and you start getting drug and there's a car in front of you, you're going to get drug through that car. So if you're out there kiting in the higher wind conditions, 8 miles an hour, where you're able to keep that wing up and it's maybe getting closer to where you're starting to get drug, you want to be aware of what is downwind of you. What is the pathway you're going to take as you work to get that wing disabled? Because you want to have time between when you start getting drug and when you disable that wing and are safe. If you have to go through a tree, a house, a fence, a neighborhood, that's not a very good kiting spot. You want to make sure that you have space, both upwind and downwind.
Yep. When you are in those higher winds, you want to know how to shut that glider down at any point. And you also, it might be a good idea to bring a friend with you who can stand on that other side of the wing and catch it in case you do start getting drug into potentially an obstacle that's in downwind of you.
If you have a friend, always bring the friend.
Always bring a friend,
but
yeah.
A friend can do things wrong to make things worse.
Exactly.
So you do need to do a little bit of work if you bring someone who's not a paramotor pilot themselves and educate them on how to help you if something is going wrong. And walk them through the procedures, what absolutely not to do, because they'll be oblivious of the things that you don't want to do, and that could lead to making things worse for you and for them. So if you do bring a friend, make sure you spend a little bit of time on helping inform them, educate them on how to help you. Okay guys, here we are at the segmented circle. All the students went in because the wind started to pick up, and today we're going to show you, or right now we're going to show you some high wind kiting techniques for disabling the glider. We chose the Roadrunner for today's kiting activities, or for right now, because we've got really high wind with some gusts. And we wanted to have the smallest canopy we could. That way we're not getting drugged, that way we're not getting lifted, that way we are maximizing our safety and minimizing our risk as much as possible. There are a couple ways that I disable a glider. The first way you can do is wrapping brakes. Grab the brakes and just continue to wrap them up in your hands. Pull, 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 pull until that wing is basically a streamer laying on the ground. Second way, you can grab your Ds and pull those Ds in as hard as you can, let the wing hit the ground, and then run sideways to the wind of that wing. Next way is you could drop it into a wind shadow. So you have a trailer, truck, or some other thing that is acting as a wind shadow. You can kind of just dump it into the ground in that wind shadow. The next way that you can do is you can drop a wingtip to a friend and have them grab it, run upwind, and then ball it into themselves like a big old wad of absolute mess. That one's not that fun, but it is a good way. The next one is you can kind of crash it into the wingtip on the side and then stall it from there. That way it lays down kind of crosswind to the wind, run sideways, quickly wrap it up and disable. Obviously, the more wind you have, the harder it's going to be to keep the wing on the ground. So you're going to want to go for the phone a friend or the wind shadow, more so if you have the ability as the wind starts to pick up. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
We'll have you first do the wrap your hands, Joe. You got the brake toggles in your hand and you just go wrap, 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 pull. Whenever you are kiting, especially in higher winds, is that there's nothing downwind of you that you're not willing to be drugged through. You want to have as much time as possible. Now in a real world situation, there's never not going to be something downwind of you. So in this case, there's hangars and stuff way off over there, but notice they're way off over there. We've got a good, I don't know, quarter mile, half mile between us and them, which means we have plenty of time to disable the wing or gain control and get the wing out of the sky between us and the objects.
As you can probably tell, it is quite windy right now. Before I clip into this glider, I'm going to make sure I can safely hang kite it so that I'm not clipping myself into a very dangerous situation. So, holding the A's and the brake risers, stepping back. Ooh, it's quite strong right now, as you can see. I'm trying to really hold my ground and keep walking back into that wind. Holding pressure on the A's and brakes right now. The wing is starting to lift me off the ground, so I'm going to just gently bring it back down with the brakes, release the A's and run towards it. Oh! I'm going to have my friend grab the wingtip and hold that glider for me. All right, so as you can clearly see, it is quite strong right now. I could barely hang kite that glider, so that is a very good sign that you might not want to clip into this glider. I absolutely do not want to fly right now because I cannot A, safely hang kite it, or B, safely clip in and kite it. Very important to recognize these as potential hazards. All right, now we're gonna let Trevor clip into this glider and demonstrate our techniques to getting this glider down in high winds. He's flown at least 2 days in his life.
I've kited at least twice. Cobra technique is a technique you use to inflate a wing in higher wind conditions. The reason we use it is because it produces less drag, meaning you're not going to get lifted off the ground and yeeted down the field. You don't want to be yeeted. So you lay the wing out in a bit of a ball with one side kind of open. That way you can kind of pop that side into the wind and then pull it directly up like that. Hypothetically, that's how it's going to work. Real world, we shall see. Where's the wind? First way that you can disable a glider is take your hands and wrap them up in the brakes like this and pull. Then that wing becomes a streamer into the wind to where it's not producing any lift, can't possibly pull you. Typically from here, I will move sideways to the wing like this until the wing is completely perpendicular to the wind. Then without undoing my brakes, I'll wrap to the glider till I get fabric and I will untangle later at home or in a wind shadow. In high wind conditions, you don't want to worry about if it's going to be in a mess, if it's going to be a tangle. You want to worry about getting that wing disabled and in a bag. Untangle it later, worry about that later. That's not as important as your safety. That's the first way. Okay, the second way is you can grab your D risers if you have them, otherwise just the rearmost risers and pull them. This way is not always as effective. Once it's down, you can move crosswind to the wind like this. Perpendicular to the wind is the better word, and wrap up the glider right there. The wind shadow can't really demonstrate because I don't have a wind shadow. So there's phone a friend. Now, when you phone a friend, you need to educate the friend on how to help you. So in this one, you're going to grab the wingtip and you're just going to run upwind until the wing is basically just a streamer. So there you go, grab that wingtip, run upwind. Boom. Now the wing is disabled, it's no longer producing lift, it's no longer dragging me. She can either wrap it up towards her, pull it into a croissant like she's doing here. She can do that, then we can walk to the wind shadow, untangle, and or put in the bag and untangle later at home. You don't worry about untangling or putting it away correctly. If there's high wind conditions, just get it out of the sky, get it in a bag. So this one is one of those techniques where you want to make sure you educate your friend on this before the situation ever comes. This is where they're basically going to take the brake toggles from you and run backwards. It's similar to the wrapping your hand technique, only it's quicker. So basically Jill would take these from me and you would just pull them backwards and run backwards real quick. Boom. Disables the wing. This is a good technique if you're out there kiting and like you fall down and your buddy's right there, just grab those brakes and yank them, get that wing disabled, because as you can see right here, it's not going anywhere.
So now we're going to be doing some maneuvering. So being able to control where that wing goes, stepping under it and getting around obstacles or through cones like we have set out here. Basically the gist of it is that you want to be creating a low side of the wing so that you can step under it to that side. So what Trevor's going to do is he's going to start back behind these two cones that are set up. Wait for the plane to move. All right, so he's going to start kiting towards me into the wind. And he's going to start pulling a little bit of right brake so that he's creating a low side on the right side that he has to step under. So he's guiding that wing that way. He's going to start walking forward again and then creating a low side on the left. So pulling a little bit of left brake and stepping under it. And then again, just centering that wing above his head and walking through those cones. All right, to recap, so what essentially we're doing is creating a low side in that wing so that you run under that low side in the opposite direction of the obstacle that you are avoiding.
If you're losing control towards an object and you don't want to hit the object, don't run away from the object, run at the object and into the wind, and you will miss the object.
A good thing to know if you have other people laid out on the field flying with you and you go to launch and maybe the wind came up in a different direction than you thought it was going to and there's a glider that you're running towards, you want to be able to know how to maneuver around that glider so that you don't necessarily have to turn around and shut the glider down, but you can try and get around that wing without creating any hazards. So now let's try it in reverse. So Trevor is going to start walking backwards into the wind, creating a low side on his left by pulling brake on his right hand, stepping under that low side, pulling the brakes back to center, moving back through those cones, and then creating a low side on his left side by pulling, or excuse me, on his right side by pulling brake with his left hand, and then again getting under those cones. Ooh, just barely, there you go. Nice job. And talking about wind, you also want to think about not only the wind speed, but also the gusts. If you're going out in higher winds, you want to make sure that that gust isn't more than 5 miles per hour stronger than that normal wind speed. Gusts can be really dangerous. They have the potential to pick you up and then drop you at any moment. So
the gusts are really the most dangerous part, because if you're out there at 8 miles an hour of wind, you're more than capable of keeping that wing under control. But if there is an additional 8 miles an hour of wind on top of that that's coming and going, you could be in a spot that you're not wanting to get drugged, all of a sudden get hit with a gust. Now you're in a tree and you're calling your friend to come pull you out of tree branches, which is not very fun, nor is it safe. And so you just want to be really aware of the gusty conditions. You know, if I'm going to go out and kite in the higher wind category, I'm very conscious of the gusts. If there is even 5 miles an hour or more of gusts, then I try to avoid it, especially for students, especially for newer pilots. As you progress and become more and more of an advanced pilot and have better control of your wing, then you can start to bring that level of wind up. You can start to go up in wind. But if you're a newer pilot who's just starting to grasp kiting and you're just starting to get it, play it safe on always play it safe. You know, if there's just a little bit more than you're comfortable with, maybe don't go. Have some patience, wait a little bit longer. You know, wait for that perfect day. If it's gusting and you're just unsure, if you're ever unsure if it's something that you can handle, don't do it. It's not worth it. You have another day, you know. Always live to kite another day, always live to fly another day. I just want to fly again tomorrow. Continue to tell yourself that and you'll be fine. Exactly. And it's, you know, you don't want to get into that panicked, frantic, like I want to do it because I haven't done it in so long. Like, it's close enough. Close enough is not close enough. Exactly. It has to be right, especially as you start to push the wind higher and higher and start to play riskier games.
Yeah, if you do feel that your skills are building enough where you do want to be starting to kite in higher winds, go out to your spot that you kite in and just sit for a half hour and watch that wind, watch your windsock and what it's doing. Get a feel for how that wind is reacting rather than just immediately pulling out your wing and bringing it up in the sky. Safe forward kiting wind speeds would be somewhere between 0 miles per hour and about 7 or 8 miles per hour. And then in terms of reverse kiting, where you are facing that wing and you have a little bit more control because you can actually see it, those would be the higher winds that you'd be kiting in, so anywhere between 8-15 miles per hour. All right, so once you get into more than 15 miles per hour, that's going to be really pushing yourself. So again, making sure you're taking all those safety precautions, you're in a good kiting location, you know how to shut that glider down, you have potentially people there who know how to shut down a glider as well, there to help you. And then when it comes to gusts, if you're in that more than 5 miles per hour over that wind speed, you are again prepared for that gust to come and again to shut that glider down.
Now, one thing I like to do, or one way I like to think about wind, is it's kind of an amplification of things. Like it's like turning on nitrous for your car. As the wind picks up, every little mistake that you make or lack of doing something gets amplified. If you forget to pull the brake until it's all the way over there, it's going to pull you that way. A little story I have to kind of give an example to that is that I was going over to this like 4-foot wall kind of hill thing. And I was going to just climb up it and jump off it because that's a whole lot of fun. There was quite a bit of wind that day, and I was a little bit on the newer side. I think I was 14 years old. So I was a young kid, didn't really know what I was doing. And I climb up it, I get picked up by a gust of wind, and I get stuck in a palm tree. The wing catches the palm tree, brand new by the way, pulled it out of the bag. Gets stuck in the palm tree, and if you know anything about palm trees, there's thorns on the top, right? So it gets genuinely stuck. Now here I am hanging about 2 feet off the ground, banging into this wall, just bam, 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 for like 5 minutes.
Not
just
a
like
fun day.
looking around, what do I do?
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. It's like 14 years old. Thankfully my uncle came over and he saved me from that one, and I was, went on to kite another day and repair that wing, which was expensive. But the moral of that story is a couple of things. Number one is you gotta be aware of like your ability.
Exactly.
That was more than what I should be chewing off, right? And that was not necessarily a safe environment for me to be taking those risks, right? I wasn't ready to go over there. It was a horrible situation, a spot, there were palm trees, I was way too close to them, and I didn't have anybody there to help me, right? Like just back to the having somebody there. If you have someone who can be there, invite them out. Invite them out. They might make fun of you, but it's better than if you're stuck in a situation that you don't know what to do and nobody's there to help you. And so that was a couple things of like taking on more than I should have too soon and eating it because of it. That was fun.
Absolutely, failure is a part of it. I mean, I see students every single week that come into class, whether they have kited before they come or not, they get absolutely frustrated. They tell me, I cannot do this. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm not doing it right. And then as soon as it does click for them, they say, I don't know how I could have done this without proper instruction. So yeah, not being prepared, not knowing what to do in certain situations can really be a deficit in this sport and create a lot of potential hazards.
I think what you're kind of saying is like you can get yourself in a dangerous situation without knowing really quickly.
Exactly. Once you've got that grasp of, I know how to forward kite for 100 feet straight without that wing falling down, and I know how to get that glider down in high wind situations, don't be afraid to start experimenting. Don't be afraid to drop your brakes and use only your body to kite the glider. Don't be afraid to twist around a bunch of times back and forth.
And so do all the things, make the mistakes, try stuff, you know, and push that envelope because it's going to further your skill level. And I think one of the things or one of the conversations that really needs to get started in the industry is like this skill set, glider control, is only beneficial. The more you do it, the better you are at it, the more it carries over into you flying and the better you will be at flying. And the example I use for that is like, look at all the people that are really, really good. They're really good at kiting.
Yeah, they spend at least a half hour per every hour that they're flying kiting.
And I think one of the reasons why most people don't is they just get bored. Like they don't continue to do it enough to where they get good at it to where it becomes fun.
Yeah.
And so they just stop.
Yeah.
And they think, oh, why do I need to do that? I know how to launch. That's all I need to know how to kite for, right? No, like glider control and ground handling carries over.
If you know what that wing is going to do at any second in time through your launch and landing, it just becomes 10 times more fun.
Yeah.
If you know exactly what you need to do at any second without even thinking about it, it's just instinct. That's when the fun really, really begins.
And you stop worrying about it.
Yeah.
And you stop breaking stuff as much. It's like way better.
You look cleaner. Everyone's going to be complimenting you on the ground. They'll be like, dang, that launch looked so good. And you're like, yeah, I had that wing under control. I knew what I was doing.
And your ego will get so big with it.
So big. Hopefully not too big.
Hopefully not. It is beneficial in all the ways, though. Do I look aviator enough? Always wear
Serious face.
a helmet, knee pads, elbow pads, wrist guard, and bubble wrap your shins, just in case you need to karate kip a shark as he comes flying by. Do you want to do the intro, or do you want me to?